Well, hello everyone. My local AT&T Long Lines Tower is a pretty cool tower, and it's actually one of my top favorite Long Lines towers. Well, it actually is my top favorite tower, because in the future I want to preserve AT&T Long Lines towers. Well, I also want to preserve all the other towers from the different Long Lines companies too. But I just drove by my local Long Lines tower the other day, yesterday evening, so my dad drove me right by it. The tower is still has its red and white paint. So I did make a mistake on that when I said it had silver paint. Like when it's painted silver, I kind of screwed up on that. So when I seen the distance from my house and the sun's reflection, it actually looked like it was silver. But when I seen it yesterday evening, it was actually still red and white. Now I also film this when my bus is turning around every morning, which is pretty cool to see in the sunrise. Like the silhouette of it. So this tower has a few things that might actually happen to it, and there could be a few bad possibilities, and it could be coming to a fate coming up. So my local AT&T Long Lines tower is actually in risk of demolition. Because if you guys haven't seen the condition it's in, it's actually corroded and all that. So this tower is like really neglected. It was neglected since 1992. But the tower is really old and it was built in 1966. So I'm afraid the tower might be taken down sometime soon because I was talking to someone on Discord about that in the Long Lines Tower channel. So let's look at this on Google Maps Street View and see what it's like on there. So I like to film this tower with every chance I have, now that I think about its demolition coming up. Which it could be a demolition real soon, actually, because of how corroded it looks and all that. Which a lot of towers now are being taken down because of issues and stuff like that. And they have to do like an emergency demolition. And there's also stuff like that where they would have to replace long line towers with regular cell towers because of all its corrosion. So there's the horn deck at the very top where the horns would sit, and below it's the catwalk. And then there's the tubes that would hold in the waveguide, which would carry radiation up to the horns. So the horns on this tower were removed in 2007, which I got a picture of it with its horns. Then there's the markers, and then up there it has an old school incandescent. So the tower, its beacon, was turned off since 1992 when AT&T abandoned it because it was out of service and they started using fiber optics. So since this tower is actually neglected, and as it gets older, there might not be any cell phone antennas being put on it, which I don't think it'll ever be repurposed anymore, which it might never will. So there's an old school incandescent you can see up on it. I really wish this old school incandescent would be working because I'd like to see it in action on Long Lines Tower. Now, believe it or not, but all the old school incandescents on AT&T Long Lines towers were around 60 FPM night mode. So they would all do the same flashback then, because I did a short clip of like a 1970 video of the Moonrise Long Lines Tower in New Jersey. It was pretty cool and it had the 60 FPM night mode. So back then, that was like how AT&T Long Lines Tower incandescent beacons flashed. Which Aiden has a video of the one in downtown Cleveland of its 60 FPM night mode. So let's go back up to the pictures I have of it. I do have an old 1968 picture of it, which I'll show you that at the end of the video. So there's a 2007 picture of it, the same year the horns were taken down. And up there you'll see the incandescent beacon, the old school incandescent. Should I have a zoom up on that one, or a screenshot? So there's the base of the Long Lines Tower, what the base of them look like, and there's the bolts. So look how all the paint job is on falling off of that. Because the paint just peeling off. So since these AT&T Long Lines towers had to withstand the atomic era, they actually had heavy duty paint on them, red and white pattern. So there's the old school incandescent beside the lightning rod. Now as you look at it closely, you can kind of see its filters look like they're broken on the inside, which I'd imagine if it still worked today it'd probably shine a yellowish color. Then here's a 2006 picture of it when it had its horns. I really wish it still had its horns now, because it'd be like the entire set of what it originally was. Now, they didn't really remove the horns shortly after they were abandoned, because it would mainly cost too much to remove them, just to rent a crane and all that. But according to the owners that had this back then, they removed the horns. They would actually tear them up and drop them off the tower piece by piece, instead of having a crane to rig the entire thing up. And here it is on a different Google Maps, right there. This is an old picture I made shortly after its horns were removed. So this tower, here's a 1968 picture of it. Now this was actually back when the tower was in the middle of nowhere, but now it's all covered up in a bunch of trees and wooded areas like that. Now I'm back. Speaking of that, my dad actually said you used to see the building from the road back in the day. The building used to be seen from the road, but look at it now, it's all grown up by those trees. Now the owner of it, which is Global Tower Partners, or it's known as American Tower, they actually have a few decommissioned cell towers that are taken down. I always thought that they was such a waste of infrastructure for no reason, because there are some perfectly good towers are taken down. And I don't want this to happen to my local AT&T Longlines tower. You wouldn't be taken down, right? Would it? It's probably only got at least 3 more years of its lifespan. But in 3 years, I'll probably own it if I ever did preserve it. So yeah, there's some demolition that might happen soon. But I'd really hate for it to be taken down, but the tower itself is kind of getting old, and and as they get older over time, they'll start having structural issues, and some of them will probably even collapse and fall apart. So sometimes it's safe to do a emergency demolition, but I don't think this tower will ever be repurposed anytime soon, just because of how old it is. And as they get older, they'll start to take them down. So I'd hate for that to happen to my local AT&T Longlines tower.